Hello people, I'm going to be doing a video on both Tom Holland's Spider-Man movies. I really wanted to do this video because I did my reviews on my channel for Far From Home, but I did want to kind of talk about it again because my opinion has changed a little bit on that movie. And Homecoming, which I had a video on it, but I believe I deleted it. So let's just talk about, first because we're talking about, these two movies, let's get into what I think of Tom Holland and Spider-Man in general. I like him, and I think he's a good Spider-Man with the material that he's given, because I don't think, well, particularly Far From Home and a little bit of Homecoming, I don't think it really has the deep layers that even the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man had, and definitely it did not have those layers that, you know, Tobey had, and like, and you kind of have to view these movies as not necessarily a Spider-Man movie. Well, particularly comparing it to the Raimi movies is not a very good thing to do with the MCU Spider-Man. Prime example is like how High Top Films feels about these movies, and I'm not targeting him. I think Alex, he sounds like a fantastic person, and I really love all his videos. I think the way he dissects his criticisms, puts you in his shoes, tells you why, and you almost feel like you have to agree with him at the end of the video. Like he shows you why his criticisms are valid. That's what I love about High Top, because, and yeah, and because, an apology if you're watching this, High Top, which you probably aren't. I apologize for what I'm about to say, because overall I enjoy these movies, and well, particularly I love Homecoming. Homecoming is top tier MCU for me. Far From Home, I think, is a great popcorn movie, but like I said, let's talk about Tom Holland. Good spot MCU Spider-Man, because like I said, we don't get a single scene in these movies where he has like a heart-to-heart with Aunt May, like with that we get with Tobey or even Andrew, like in Amazing Spider-Man 2, which he has that scene with talking about his parents, like, and with any other scene in the Tobey movies, we don't necessarily get that particularly themes of Spider-Man, but these movies go particularly more for the relatable situations that Spider-Man gets into. So you still get that Spider-Man feel, but you kind of get more of a fun, light version of it. And that's fine for, MCU, because take that away, the fact that it's from a Spider-Man movie. For an MCU movie, I still think particularly Homecoming is it's very heavy for MCU, and particularly to have it in that type of small scale, because what I love about Homecoming, let's talk about Homecoming first. I love how small scale it is, but yet since it's told from Peter's eyes, everything that you see feels large, big. Peter just on a small little plane, well, not really, it's a humongous plane. It's Peter on a plane crashing it onto the beach. That feels humongous to us, because you get that scale of Spider-Man that you want. And while, in Endgame, a plane crashing on the beach is just like a drop of water in these movies. So that's what I really love about Homecoming. It really keeps that scale of, he's a kid, he's on this plane, and it's about to crash. What I love about this movie as well, Michael Keaton's Vulture. I love him. He's probably my second or third favorite live action Spider-Man villain that we've gotten yet. Particularly at first when I was watching Homecoming, I was like, Vulture's a great villain, but we don't get that connection to Peter Parker like that we get in like the Raimi movies. But the second that door opens, when he is about to go to prom, that criticism slapped in the face, and they're like, ha, you thought we were gonna do that, but no. He's Liz's dad, which is like it's oddly perfect for Spider-Man, if that makes sense. It's just so good. And this third act of Spider-Man Homecoming is so well done. I have a thing for third acts in the MCU. I think they shouldn't all feel the same like they have been lately. The third act in Homecoming feels like it's the best part of the movie, which the MCU should be like. The MCU third act, the grand third act, should be the best part of the movie, not the most lackluster one. I love Endgame overall, but out of the 3 hours that we got, the last hour of it was definitely kind of my least favorite. Yes, I love the fan service. I love seeing Thor get Cap's hammer. I loved seeing Iron Man snap sacrificing himself, and I loved the last 15 minutes. But the first 2 hours of Endgame was just I just loved it a lot more. And not to say I don't like the third hour, it's just that, and that's how typical Marvel goes. For me personally, this movie is the opposite. The first two acts were great. Third act of Homecoming is like maybe the best third act we had in the MCU. I love Homecoming because this movie is really funny. This is probably one of the funnier MCU movies, but this movie particularly falls in line with my type of comedy, I noticed. And so, yeah, Homecoming's comedy is just some of my favorite MCU comedy we've ever gotten. I don't know if it's because of my age, it kind of fits into like my demographic right now. So I don't know if it's that or if it's just me personally. So yeah, I love Spider-Man Homecoming. I think it tells a personal, well, a conflict that seems personal, but feels light on those Spider-Man themes that you really want. But compared to, for an MCU movie, this is one of their best. I love it. I know it's a hot take. Most people have like Spider-Man Homecoming like in the middle tier. I think this is top tier MCU. And yeah. Anyways, I'm going to give Spider-Man Homecoming a 9.3 out of 10. Now it's time to talk about Spider-Man Far From Home, which I gave a great review back in 2019. I gave it an 8.8, I believe. And now I still like the movie. I think it's a really fun action summer blockbuster. But what bothers me is that Spider-Man though? Is Spider-Man supposed to be a big action summer blockbuster? And the answer is yes, but it still has to keep that Spider-Man feel. And it does not, this movie doesn't do enough for me to maintain the Spider-Man feel. This movie feels more like a MCU Tom Holland summer blockbuster than it does a Spider-Man movie. Because we have some storylines here that I just don't like at all. Particularly the storyline of the character named Brad. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's just, it tries to bring back that relatability factor, but it's a storyline that favors laughs over relatability. So when you have these stupid laughs and it leads to storylines that it just almost loses that relatability factor, because I don't think this movie was very relatable. Yes, you have that summer trip. Peter's trying to tell MJ how he feels, but it just loses a lot of steam with this Brad storyline. I don't feel like the emotional payoff like that Spider-Man 2 had. I don't feel it in this movie. Yes, you feel like, yeah, I felt happy for Peter once when MJ finally knew and they got together. It's just it didn't have that payoff I wanted like the other Raimi movies had. And like I said, I had to view this as a summer blockbuster because I like Jake Gyllenhaal. Mysterio, I think, is a step down compared to Vulture. I loved Vulture as a villain. I think he's one of the best MCU villains. But Mysterio, like, I love Jake Gyllenhaal. Everything that he's been in he's just been perfect in. And he's perfect as this role that he's given. But, the role itself is fairly flawed. And I don't want to sound like, I listen to High Top too much. But what bothers me in this movie is mostly how this movie is Tony Stark movie almost. Like, we have, Tony Stark glasses, and we have these weird things of dialogue that surround Tony. And we can talk about Tony. That's perfectly fine. It's just the way that this movie handles it wasn't very well done, I thought. We get weird lines from Samuel L. Jackson saying, blah, 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 something about the throne and the king that's supposed to be philosophical. And then he turns to Peter and says, Tony said you wouldn't get that because it's not a Star Wars reference. And then he's given the Edith glasses for the next Tony Stark, I trust you. And you would think that would somehow be included with Endgame, and it would kind of go full circle, but it really feels like the movie's just pulling it out of nowhere, saying, Tony said this, Tony said that, Tony, yep, just bring what Tony said. It just doesn't feel realistic because it felt like if Tony knew, it would have been not given for Nick Fury to give Spider-Man, because everyone knows Nick Fury just keeps everything for himself. It's a running joke in the movie. And so, and clearly we know that Tony does not trust Shield because he encrypted he spied on their network in 2012's Avengers. And so when the movie kind of goes out of its way to pull these plot devices, and it just, like, that doesn't feel like Spider-Man. But I don't want to sound like I don't dislike this movie, because like I said, I could watch this movie, just have a fun time with it. And I'm at that point where that's what I do. Like, I watched it the other day, and the one thing I do think this movie did better than Homecoming is the action and the visuals, because this movie is visually stunning and it's some of the best CGI we've ever had in the MCU. The action sequences with Mysterio and he's fighting the drones is just jaw-dropping. It's so well done, those sequences. And what else I was going to say? The comedy in this movie also was not... the comedy in this movie didn't really work for me. And that's so weird because it's from the same team for Homecoming. You would think the same team from Homecoming would, get it right in Far From Home. But for me, that didn't really work with a lot of the comedy. Because it's not that it wasn't funny, it was just taking away from elements that could have been more serious in these movies. In this movie. So, yeah, like this movie is a lot better paced than Homecoming. Well, I felt like we could have spent a little bit more time in New York before we went to Europe. Well, I felt like the first maybe 10 minutes felt a little rushed, but Homecoming has some slowing down in the at one portion in the first and second act. So overall, once we get to Europe, the movie moves pretty fast and is pretty well paced. And by the way, I don't like the bus scene at all. I don't like it. It's really irritating, and it's probably one of the more cringy scenes we've had in the MCU. Like, I cringe every time. I couldn't help it. I cringed in the theater. I still cringe now. But overall, I like Far From Home. I don't love Far From Home. It's not my favorite Marvel movie or anything. Out of Phase 4, it's probably my second to bottom. Black Widow's at bottom, and I still like Black Widow. I like all the Phase 4 movie stuff so far. So I don't want to seem like I don't like this movie. It's just I have problems with it, and the fact that this movie has a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes has me a little confused. But at the same time, Ant-Man and the Wasp has an 87, which, you know how I feel about that movie. So yeah. Anyways, comment down below what you guys thought of Homecoming and Far From Home. Which one do you guys prefer? I'm very curious about that. Like we all know, it's obvious that I prefer Homecoming to Far From Home, and I don't think I gave Far From Home a score. Crap. I'm gonna alter my score for Far From Home from an 8.7, and now it is a 7.3 out of 10. Still a movie I really enjoy. It's just some problems with the Spider-Man character that I wish it should tap more into. And I feel like this is a great time to talk about No Way Home before I get into that, because of course I was a little concerned. Of course, after Far From Home, I would just kind of hoping that we get the Spider-Man themes back, and I'm desperate for that. And from the trailers that we've been getting, the way the cast is talking about the movie, I am really looking forward to No Way Home, because it feels like we're getting a lot of those themes back. Peter having consequences. We know Peter's going to lose someone in this movie. And that opening shot of the new trailer just tells you everything you need to know about this movie. Peter just almost looking completely dead inside in the rain. It's that side of Tom Holland that we have not seen yet. The way that Tom's talking about how Spider-Man almost takes it too far in this movie is something that I really want to see. The way that William Dafoe is talking about this movie, the way that Alfred Malone is talking about this movie. And, they're not just saying it was a really fun time, and they're talking about these themes that they really liked that was brought up. And so I have a lot of faith in No Way Home, and after all this hype, this better be top tier Marvel. Because my God, getting tickets was just the biggest pain of my life. So yeah, comment down below what you guys thought of this video. I know this one's fairly long, but I did talk about 2 movies. So yeah. Anyways, like, share, subscribe, and stuff like that, and adios.